Print, email, Facebook, Twitter. More. Peter Costello changes his mind about the budget, criticizes ASIC media player, space to play, M to mute, left and right to seek, 0006:1800:0006:18. Former Treasurer Peter Costello has given the seal of approval for the Turnbull government's budget, despite savaging it last week, the night before it was delivered. Speaking at a breakfast event on Monday, Mr. Costello threw his support behind the government's long-term plan to reduce taxes for high-income earners, the forgotten people in his words. What a difference 1 week makes. Last Monday, he told 7.30 that most Australians would be dead before the national debt is paid off. I think the probabilities are we'll never get back to where we were. You and I will die before that happens. It was, therefore, fair to ask the former Treasurer a follow-up question: when do you think you might die? Mr. Costello erupted in laughter before replying, "I'm planning to live as long as I can." He then sought to clarify his comments from last week. Labor could get elected, he told ABC's The Business. "Don't think that we couldn't have a change of government in the next 10 years. I think their policy is to increase spending. There are a lot of things that can happen between now and then. It's all or nothing." There is some common ground between the coalition and Labor's budget policy. They both want low to middle income owners to receive the 4-year low and middle income tax offset, (MITO), from July this year, Phase 1. But the opposition does not support Phase 2 of the budget, which will lift the 32.5% tax bracket from $37,000 to $41,000 from July 2022. This is expected to benefit upper middle and high-income earners. Nor does it support the third phase, in which the 37% tax bracket will be removed to create a giant middle tax bracket of 32.5%. This would apply from July 2024 to people who earn between $41,000 and $200,000. Shadow Treasurer Chris Bowen has urged the government to break up the budget bill so low to middle income earners can benefit from Phase 1 from July. However, Treasurer Scott Morrison refuses to carve up the bill and issued an all-or-nothing ultimatum. Essentially, if the entire budget plan fails to pass Parliament by July 1, then the government will not break up the legislation, and tax cuts for low to middle income earners will be delayed by another year. Mr. Costello has defended the incumbent Treasurer's decision. "If you let people cherry-pick, you won't get the overall plan. The Labour Party would cherry-pick for the low and middle income tax offset, and they leave the real reform. The real reform is the increase in thresholds and making sure there's only one continuous rate, for taxpayers earning between $40,000 and $200,000. If every tax plan got cherry-picked, you wouldn't get the overall result, and that's why it's being linked." A swipe at the corporate regulator. Mr. Costello also criticized the corporate regulator ASIC for its ineffective policing of the financial services sector. Budget 2018. Will your income tax change? Your 2019 tax bill drops $0 per week, $0 per year. Calculation includes income tax, lower income tax offset and lower and middle income tax offset. ASIC rarely takes law-breaking corporations to court, but instead requires them to sign enforceable undertakings. Last week's budget revealed ASIC's funding would be slashed by $28 million over 3 years, despite the litany of wrongdoing committed by AMP and the big banks uncovered by the Financial Services Royal Commission. A former in-house lawyer from ASIC told PM, in April, that the regulator has a culture of subservience and acquiescence when it comes to the big banks. When asked about his thoughts on the funding cut, Mr. Costello said, "It should be well funded, there's no doubt about that." He immediately qualified his statement, "But yes, it should be doing well with the money it's got too." Although the big banks have copped substantial criticism for putting profit ahead of their customers' best interests, the former Treasurer believes the Royal Commission should place further scrutiny on ASIC. "We've seen some bad behaviour, but what we don't know yet is what the corporate regulator was doing about it. I'd like to hear ASIC explain to the Royal Commissioner why it kept slapping enforceable undertakings on big banks, and why it was considered better than taking legal action. It's one thing to look at the banks and other companies and say no one was holding them to account. But it's another thing again, and we should do it, to say what about the people who were supposed to be holding them to account? What were they doing through this whole thing?" Print, email, Facebook, Twitter.